Why did Aegon and Aemond reunite? House of the Dragon Season 3, Episode 8 explained. Warning: this video contains major spoilers for House of the Dragon Season 3, Episode 8, including the reunion between Aegon and Aemond, their confrontation at Harrenhal, and what it could mean for the final season. One of the biggest surprises in the House of the Dragon Season 3 finale isn't a dragon battle or a major death. It's the moment Aegon and Aemond finally come face to face again. For most of the season, these two brothers have been moving in completely different directions. Aegon was believed to be defeated after Rook's Rest. Aemond took control of the Green Cause. And for a while, it looked like the two brothers might never meet again. But in the finale, Aegon arrives at Harrenhal. Aemond is there. And suddenly, the two most important surviving members of the Green side are standing in the same place. But this isn't exactly a happy family reunion. Aegon has every reason to hate Aemond. Aemond helped cause the injuries that nearly killed him. Aemond took control while Aegon was incapacitated. And now, Aegon wants something very important from his younger brother. So why did Aegon and Aemond reunite? Why doesn't Aegon simply kill Aemond? And why does Aemond, who has Vhagar and enormous power, hesitate when his brother returns? Let's break it all down. 1. Aegon was supposed to be gone. To understand their reunion, we have to go back to Rook's Rest. Aegon and Sunfyre were horribly injured during the battle. Aegon's body was burned and broken, while Sunfyre was left severely wounded. For much of the story, Aegon's survival was uncertain. That allowed Aemond to step into a much more powerful position. Aemond became the dominant military figure on the Green side. He had Vhagar. He had the authority of the Regency. And most importantly, he was no longer living under the shadow of his older brother. But Aegon wasn't dead. He survived. And by the time he reaches Harrenhal, Aemond has to face a reality he probably hoped he would never have to deal with again. Aegon is still king. The Season 3 finale makes this reunion one of the major setups for the final chapter of the dance. 2. Aemond took Aegon's place. While Aegon was recovering, Aemond effectively became the face of the Green War effort. This created an enormous problem. Aegon and Aemond were never particularly close. Their relationship had already been complicated before the dance. Aegon mocked Aemond. Aemond considered Aegon weak and unworthy. And both brothers competed for respect within the family. But after Rook's Rest, that rivalry became something much more dangerous. Aemond had the opportunity to become the king's replacement, and he took it. That means when Aegon finally returns, he isn't simply meeting his younger brother. He's meeting the man who took his position while he was believed to be dying. 3. Aegon has every reason to hate Aemond. This is probably the biggest reason their reunion is so tense. At Rook's Rest, Aegon was already fighting melees with Sunfyre. Aemond and Vhagar entered the battle. Instead of simply helping Aegon, Aemond's attack contributed to the devastating injuries suffered by both Aegon and Sunfyre. Aegon survived, but he was permanently changed. So when Aegon walks into Harrenhal, he isn't meeting Aemond as the same man who left for Rook's Rest. He's scarred, he's physically weakened, and he knows exactly what happened to him. That's why the slap between the brothers is so important. 4. So why doesn't Aegon kill Aemond? This is where the reunion becomes strategically important. Aegon could have tried to kill Aemond. He has every personal reason to want revenge. But the Green Cause is in terrible shape. Rhaenyra's forces are becoming increasingly powerful. The war has already caused enormous losses. And Aegon is badly injured. He cannot afford to throw away another major weapon. Aemond is still a dragon rider. And more importantly, Vhagar is still one of the most powerful dragons in the war. Aegon needs that power. So even though he hates Aemond, killing him would be strategically foolish. The two brothers may despise each other, but they have something neither can ignore. They need each other. That is the foundation of their fragile reunion. 5. Why does Aemond not kill Aegon? The question works in the opposite direction too. Aemond had previously considered Aegon an obstacle. He believed Aegon was an ineffective king. He had effectively taken control of the Green cause. So why doesn't he simply finish the job when Aegon appears? Because Aemond is no longer in the same position psychologically. His time at Harrenhal has changed him. His encounters with Alice Rivers have forced him to confront his own fears and ambitions. And by the finale, Aemond appears to have reached a very different emotional state. The return of Aegon forces him to confront something he may have been avoiding. He can't simply erase his brother and pretend the problem is gone. Aegon is alive, and Aemond has to deal with him. 6. Aegon isn't returning just for revenge. This is an important detail. If Aegon only wanted revenge, he could have confronted Aegon and tried to kill him. Instead, he has a larger objective: the Iron Throne. Aegon still believes he is king, and he wants to take back what he lost. That's why his reunion with Aemond isn't simply about settling an old family argument. It is about rebuilding the Green cause. Aegon needs soldiers, he needs allies, he needs dragons, and he needs Aemond. Even if their relationship is completely broken, their political interests temporarily overlap. 7. Why does Aegon need Aemond so badly? Because Aegon is no longer the fighter he once was. His injuries have permanently changed him. He can't simply climb onto Sunfyre and behave as though nothing happened. His physical condition makes his return to the war much more complicated. Aemond, meanwhile, still has Vhagar. That gives him enormous military value. So the brothers now represent two different forms of power. Aegon has the claim. Aemond has the military strength. Aegon is the king. Aemond is the warrior. Neither one completely replaces the other, and that creates a very uncomfortable partnership. 8. The reunion is also about survival. This is one of the biggest changes in Aegon's character. Earlier in the story, Aegon often behaved as though being king was about privilege. He wanted the attention, he wanted the status. But after Rook's rest, his priorities have changed. He knows what it feels like to be helpless. He knows what it feels like to be hunted. He knows that his own family members can turn against him. And now he has returned from what everyone thought was certain death. That gives his character a different motivation. He doesn't necessarily need to prove that he's the strongest. He simply needs to survive. And reclaiming the throne becomes part of that survival. His reunion with Aemond shows that Aegon is willing to put personal hatred aside when necessary. Not because he forgives Aemond, but because he understands that there is still a war to win. 9. Why is the reunion so important for the Green side? The Greens have been falling apart from within. Aegon and Aemond have spent much of the story competing with each other. Alicent's influence has weakened. The military situation has become increasingly complicated. And the Targaryen civil war has turned into something much bigger than either side expected. But now the two brothers are together again. That could give the Greens a new direction. Instead of having Aemond acting independently and Aegon trying to survive separately, they now have a common objective: take back the Iron Throne. The problem is that their alliance is incredibly fragile. They haven't forgiven each other. They don't trust each other. And there is still a huge amount of resentment between them. So the question isn't whether they can work together, it's how long can they work together before their hatred gets in the way. 10. What does this mean for Season 4? The reunion sets up a fascinating conflict for the final season. Aegon wants his throne back. Aemond still has his own ambitions. Rhaenyra is determined to hold the capital and destroy her remaining enemies. And the Green side now has two brothers who have every reason to distrust one another. That creates several possibilities. Could Aegon use Aemond's military power to reclaim the throne? Could Aemond eventually turn against Aegon again? Could the brothers actually become temporary allies? Or will their rivalry eventually destroy them both? The finale doesn't give us a simple answer. Instead, it puts them in the same room and lets the tension speak for itself. 11. Why does Aegon slap Aemond? The slap is probably the clearest summary of their entire relationship. Aegon has just returned from the dead. Aemond is stunned. Aegon knows what his brother did, and instead of giving him a long speech, he simply walks over and hits him. It's funny because of the timing, but emotionally it's completely understandable. Aegon is basically saying, "You thought I was dead. You took my position. You thought you had won, but I'm still here." And that is exactly what makes the scene work. Aegon isn't returning as the same carefree prince. He's returning as someone who has survived something terrible. Final thoughts. So, why did Aegon and Aemond reunite? The simple answer is, because they need each other. Aegon needs Aemond's military power and Vhagar. Aemond needs Aegon's legitimacy as the green claimant to the Iron Throne. Neither brother is strong enough to simply ignore the other. But their reunion is much more complicated than a political alliance. Aegon has not forgotten what Aemond did at Rook's Rest. Aemond has not forgotten how much he resented Aegon as king. And the slap makes it very clear that the wounds between them are still there. Yet the dance has reached a point where personal hatred has to compete with survival. That's what makes the reunion so interesting. These aren't two brothers suddenly reconciling. They're two enemies within the same family temporarily choosing the same goal. Aegon wants his crown back. Aemond still has the power to help him get it. And together, they may represent the green side's last serious chance to change the course of the war. But there is one huge problem. The Targaryens have repeatedly shown that their greatest threat isn't always the enemies standing across the battlefield. Sometimes, it's the family standing beside them. Aegon and Aemond may have reunited at Harrenhal, but whether they can actually trust each other is another question entirely. And heading into the final season, that may be one of the most dangerous relationships in the entire Dance of the Dragon.